The Zephyrian Empire had ruled over 17 star systems for over 3 millennia. Their sleek crystalline ships cut through the void like silent predators, carrying the weight of absolute authority. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's edge, his 6 arms crossed behind his back as he gazed at the tactical display showing the newest addition to their empire. Sol System. Third planet. Earth. The planet hung before them like a blue marble, swirled with white clouds and brown continents. Intelligence reports indicated a primitive civilization that had barely reached their own moon. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light capability. It should have been a simple annexation, like the dozens that came before. "Sir," Communications Officer Veltane chirped from her station, her voice carrying the musical quality of her aquatic species. "We're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. They appear to be attempting to communicate." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Attempting? They haven't even developed quantum resonance frequencies. What could they possibly have to say? The bridge crew shared the Admiral's humor. Lieutenant Zaxthor, whose reptilian features were marked by ceremonial scars of conquest, hissed softly. Perhaps they wish to surrender immediately. Some species show wisdom in recognizing superior firepower. Decode their primitive signals, Kethvar ordered with a dismissive wave. Let's see what these humans have to say before we begin the occupation protocols. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a middle-aged human male in what appeared to be some kind of ceremonial blue clothing, covered in colorful insignia. Behind him stood others of his species, their faces bearing expressions the Zephyrians couldn't quite interpret. "This is President Chen of the United Earth Alliance," the human began, his voice translated through the ship's universal language matrix. "We've detected your vessels in our system. We're hoping we can establish peaceful diplomatic relations." The bridge erupted in chittering laughter. Diplomatic relations? With a species that hadn't even colonized their neighboring planets? Curious, mused Science Officer Nixara, her multifaceted eyes gleaming. "Their bio-readings show elevated stress markers, but they're not fleeing or showing signs of panic. Most primitive species either worship us as gods or cower in terror." Kethvar studied the human leader more carefully. The man's stance was straight, his eyes direct. There was something in his expression that didn't match the cowering fear they usually encountered. It was almost as if, "Sir," Tactical Officer Raven interrupted, "we're detecting massive movement across the planet's surface. Ships are launching from multiple continents, but they're not fleeing the system. They're converging on our position." "Ships?" Kethvar's voice carried disbelief. What kind of threat could their primitive vessels possibly pose? The tactical display lit up with hundreds of red dots rising from Earth's surface and its orbital stations. More concerning, similar readings were appearing from the asteroid belt and the outer planets. "Admiral," Beltane's voice had lost its earlier amusement. "We're receiving another transmission. This one is coming from everywhere. Every ship, every station, every settlement in the system is broadcasting the same message simultaneously." The screen changed, showing not the formal interior of a government building, but what appeared to be a cramped space station. A woman in a utilitarian jumpsuit stood before the camera, her hands covered in what looked like machine grease, her expression determined. "To the alien fleet currently threatening our home," she began. "This is Commander Sarah Okafor of Mining Station Series 7. We got word you're here to take our planet. We got one thing to say about that." She paused and her expression hardened. "Over our dead bodies." The transmission cut, but immediately another took its place. A man in military uniform standing in what looked like a submarine. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the UEA submarine Leviathan. We're coming up to say hello." Another cut. A group of teenagers in spacesuits floating in what appeared to be a cargo bay. "This is the crew of the freight hauler Lucky Strike. Our cargo today is a special delivery of Earth hospitality." Cut after cut, the transmissions kept coming. Farmers, soldiers, factory workers, children, elderly people in wheelchairs, scientists, artists, mechanics. Every face showed the same impossible thing. Not fear, but determination. Not cowering, but defiance. "How many ships are we detecting now?" Kethvar asked, his voice tight. "Over 3,000 and climbing, sir. Everything from their military vessels to converted freight haulers. They're even loading weapons onto civilian transports." Raven's voice carried confusion. "Sir, Some of these vessels appear to be held together with what our translators are calling duct tape and prayers. Nixara looked up from her console, her expression troubled. Admiral, I'm reading some very unusual energy signatures from their approaching fleet. They're not using antimatter or plasma propulsion like any civilized species. Instead, they're using controlled explosions. Thousands of them per second. Explosions? Kethvar turned sharply. They're propelling their ships with explosions? It's more primitive than anything in our databases, but... She paused, checking her readings again. Sir, some of these ships are moving faster than they should be able to given their apparent technology level. They're pushing their vessels beyond safe operational parameters. Lieutenant Zaxthor studied the tactical display with growing unease. Admiral, this doesn't match standard first contact protocols. Usually, primitive species either worship us immediately or flee to the furthest reaches of their system. They don't organize, they don't coordinate, they don't... He paused, searching for words. They don't all fight back. On the screen, the transmissions continued. A woman with paint-stained fingers stood in what looked like an art studio. This is Maria Santos. I make children's book illustrations. Today I'm going to illustrate what happens when you threaten Earth's children. A grizzled man covered in coal dust wiped his hands on a rag. Name's Murphy. I mine asteroids for a living. Today I'm mining something else. Your hulls. Sir. Veltane's voice was now openly worried. I'm detecting weapon signatures unlike anything in our database. They appear to have taken their mining equipment, construction tools, even kitchen appliances, and weaponized them. Admiral, they've turned their entire civilization into a weapon. Kethvar stared at the tactical display. 3,000 ships and counting, all racing toward his fleet with reckless abandon. No formation, no coordinated strategy, just pure, chaotic determination. It was unprecedented. It was impossible. It was, Sir, communications reported, we're receiving one final transmission. It's coming from their planet's surface, but it's being rebroadcast by every ship in their fleet. The screen showed an elderly man in simple clothes, standing in what appeared to be a farm field. Behind him, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. He looked directly into the camera with eyes that had seen decades of life. My name is Thomas Chen. I'm 93 years old. I fought in 3 wars, survived 2 famines, and helped build the first colony ship that took our children to the stars. His voice was calm, gentle even. I want you to understand something about humanity. We've never been the strongest. We've never been the fastest. We've never been the smartest. But we've got one thing that's kept us alive since we lived in caves and fought off predators with sharpened sticks. He paused. And when he continued, his voice carried the weight of every human who had ever lived. We never, ever give up. Welcome to Earth. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Dominion's edge in absolute silence. Admiral Kethvar had conquered 47 worlds in his career. He had seen species flee in terror, others attempt futile last stands with their best military units, and a few try to negotiate their way to favorable surrender terms. He had never seen anything like what was happening in the Sol system. Tactical report, he ordered, trying to maintain the composure that had served him through decades of conquest. Sir, their fleet composition is unique, Raven replied, his scaled fingers dancing across his console. We have confirmed military vessels, but they're outnumbered 5 to 1 by converted civilian ships. Cargo haulers mounting missile pods, passenger liners with plasma cutters welded to their hulls, something called a school bus that's been fitted with what appears to be a mining laser. A school bus? Kethvar's mandibles twitched. Used for transporting their young, sir. According to their database, it carried 26 children to educational facilities as recently as yesterday. Today it's mounting torpedoes and heading directly for our flagship. Science Officer Nixara looked up from her station, her compound eyes reflecting the glow of her screens. Admiral, I'm detecting some very unusual modifications throughout their fleet. They've welded armor plating from construction equipment onto ship hulls. They're using fire suppression systems as makeshift torpedo launchers. One vessel appears to have attached farming equipment as close combat weapons. Farming equipment? Lieutenant Zaxthor hissed. What could they possibly do with farming equipment? This particular unit is called a combine harvester, sir. Normally used to cut down plants for food production. They've attached it to the front of a freight vessel. Nixara paused. Given the size and power of the cutting mechanisms, I would not want to be the ship it decides to harvest. The main screen shifted to show the approaching human fleet. It was unlike anything in Zephyrian military doctrine. Instead of precise formations and coordinated movements, the humans swarmed through space like an angry hive. Ships zigzagged unpredictably, some accelerating beyond safe limits, others suddenly decelerating to allow faster vessels to pass. They have no formation discipline, Tactical Officer Raven observed. No unified command structure that I can detect. How are they coordinating? They're not, Beltane said from communications, her melodic voice filled with confusion. I'm monitoring their transmissions. Each ship, each group, sometimes even individual crew members are making independent decisions. They're sharing information constantly, but there's no central command giving orders. Impossible, Kethavar stated flatly. No military force can function without central coordination. They'll destroy each other before they reach us. But even as he spoke, he watched the tactical display prove him wrong. When a group of faster ships threatened to outdistance the main fleet, they spontaneously slowed down. When a cluster of vessels found themselves in a collision course, they adjusted without any apparent communication. It was as if the entire fleet was thinking with one mind, while each ship maintained individual initiative. Sir, Beltane continued, I'm picking up some interesting chatter from their fleet. Translating now. She touched her console. And suddenly the bridge was filled with human voices. Mining ship Dirt Devil to freight hauler Big Mama. I see you're carrying some heavy ordnance there. You bet. Dirt Devil, 40 tons of industrial explosives, was supposed to be delivering them to the Mars terraforming project. Well, I reckon the terraforming project can wait. Mars ain't going anywhere. Negative, Big Mama. Mars will still be there when we're done here. Can't say the same for these metal jerks if they think they can just waltz in and take our home. Another voice cut in. This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the UEA Defiant. All civilian vessels, be advised, we're deploying in a protective formation around you. Negative, Captain, came the reply from what sounded like an older man. This is Captain Murphy of the asteroid miner Rockhopper. We appreciate the thought, but we didn't come out here to hide behind the Navy. We came to fight. Murphy, your ship is held together with welds and prayer, Captain Martinez protested. You're carrying mining equipment, not weapons. Ma'am, respectfully, I've been cracking asteroids for 30 years. I know a thing or two about breaking up big chunks of rock and metal. Today I'm just working with a different kind of asteroid. Kethavar listened to the exchanges with growing bewilderment. These humans spoke of combat like it was a neighborhood gathering. There was casualness in their voices, even humor, but underneath it was something that made his chitin crawl. Analysis of their weapon systems? He asked. Nixara consulted her readings. This is where it gets truly bizarre, sir. Roughly 30% of their fleet is using standard military weapons. But the rest? She paused. Sir, they've weaponized everything. Industrial lasers, mining charges, construction tools, even kitchen equipment. Kitchen equipment? One vessel appears to have mounted what they call a pressure cooker as a projectile launcher. Another has rigged their coffee machine to spray superheated liquid. She looked up, her expression troubled. Admiral, they've turned their entire society into a weapons platform. Every tool, every machine, every piece of technology has been repurposed for combat. Lieutenant Zaxthor studied the approaching fleet through the long-range sensors. Sir, I'm detecting some unusual ship movements. Several vessels are dancing. They're performing coordinated maneuvers with no apparent tactical purpose. Spinning, weaving, almost like a ritual display. Beltane's translation matrix crackled to life. This is the crew of the Lucky Strike. We're playing our traditional pre-battle music. Anyone else want to join the dance? Suddenly, dozens of ships began performing the same seemingly random movements, but now they could hear the music the humans were transmitting. It was unlike anything in Zephyrian culture, wild, energetic, defiant. They're celebrating, Nixara said in amazement. Admiral, they're heading into battle against a vastly superior force, and they're celebrating. Sir, Raven interrupted. Their fleet has reached weapons range. Awaiting orders. Kethavar looked at the display showing 3,000 human ships bearing down on his fleet of 200 vessels. Each Zephyrian ship was technologically superior, heavily armed and crewed by professional warriors. By every tactical analysis, this should be a massacre. The humans should have been destroyed before they got within effective range. But something nagged at him. In 47 conquests, he had never seen anything like the determination radiating from the human fleet. They weren't fleeing. They weren't cowering. They weren't even acting like a military force. They were acting like, "Sir," Beltane called out. "We're receiving another transmission. It's from their lead vessel." The screen showed a woman in military uniform, but her bridge was unlike any command center Kethvar had ever seen. Crew members wore different uniforms. Some weren't in uniform at all. There were civilians mixed in with military personnel. Someone was actually eating what appeared to be a sandwich while manning a weapons console. "This is Admiral Rebecca Thompson of the United Earth Alliance," the woman said. "I know you can understand this, so I'll make it simple. You came to our home uninvited. You threatened our families. You made the biggest mistake in the history of your species." She paused and her expression hardened. "You see, we humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've gotten very, very good at it. We've fought with sticks and stones, with swords and guns, with tanks and aircraft and nuclear weapons. We've fought in every environment our planet has to offer, on land, in the air, underwater, in frozen wastelands and burning deserts." The camera pulled back slightly, showing more of her bridge crew. Every face wore the same expression of quiet determination. "But we've never fought as one people before. Never had a reason to put aside our differences and work together completely. You just gave us that reason." Admiral Thompson smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We're about to show you what humanity looks like when we stop fighting each other and start fighting together." She leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. "Last chance. Leave our system now and we'll let you go. Stay, and you'll learn why every predator on our planet learned to fear the hairless apes with opposable thumbs and really bad attitudes." The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian bridge in tense silence. Outside the viewports, the human fleet continued its inexorable approach, 3,000 ships strong and growing as more vessels continued to launch from every corner of the Sol system. "Orders, sir?" Raven asked quietly. Admiral Kethvar had built his reputation on decisive action. 3 seconds of hesitation could mean the difference between victory and defeat in space combat. But as he stared at the approaching human fleet, something unprecedented happened. He hesitated. "Sir?" Raven pressed. "Your orders?" "Standard engagement protocol," Kithvar finally commanded, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "All ships prepare for battle. Target their largest vessels first." The Zephyrian fleet moved into formation with practiced precision. Energy shields hummed to life. Plasma cannons swiveled toward the approaching humans, and missile tubes loaded their deadly cargo. 200 ships of the Imperial Navy prepared to demonstrate the superiority of advanced technology over primitive determination. "Weapons locked on target," Raven reported. "Firing solutions confirmed." Fire. The first salvo from the Zephyrian fleet lit up the void between the forces. Plasma beams and quantum torpedoes streaked toward the human ships with lethal precision. The weapons were perfectly aimed, utilizing targeting computers that could track a grain of sand across a solar system. Then something impossible happened. "Sir," Raven's voice cracked with disbelief. They're dodging." The human ships suddenly broke from their seemingly chaotic formation into movements that defied tactical logic. Some accelerated beyond safe parameters. Others decelerated so rapidly they should have torn apart from the stress. Ships rolled, twisted, and spiraled through space like leaves in a hurricane. The plasma beams, aimed at where the ships should have been, struck empty space. Quantum torpedoes, programmed to track their targets, found themselves chasing vessels that moved like nothing in their databases. "How?" Kethvar demanded. "How are they predicting our targeting solutions?" Science Officer Nixara's compound eyes were wide with confusion. "Sir, they're not predicting anything. According to my readings, most of those maneuvers were initiated after our weapons were already fired. They're reacting faster than should be physically possible. That's impossible. No biological nervous system can react that quickly to—" "Sir," Beltane interrupted. "I'm picking up massive communication traffic between their ships. They're sharing targeting data in real time, but the processing speed—" She paused. "Admiral, they're not using centralized computers. Every ship, every crew member is contributing to their collective tactical awareness. It's like they're thinking as one organism while maintaining individual responses." The human fleet's return fire was unlike anything in Zephyrian military experience. Instead of coordinated volleys, it came in waves of seemingly random attacks. Mining lasers that had been modified to cut through asteroid rock now sliced through Zephyrian hulls. Industrial explosives meant for terraforming operations detonated against energy shields. Even improvised weapons cobbled together from civilian equipment proved surprisingly effective. Damage report, Kathavar ordered as the flagship shuddered under impact. Minor hull damage to Sections 7 and 12, came the response. But sir, the Eternal Victory reports they've been boarded. Boarded? By what? Unknown, sir. Captain Higzara reports that something attached to their hull and burned through the outer armor. They're detecting multiple intruders moving through their ship. Lieutenant Zaxthor pulled up the tactical display of the Eternal Victory. Sir, I see the problem. One of their civilian vessels, it appears to be some kind of maintenance pod, has locked onto our ship like a parasite. They've cut through the hull and deployed armed personnel inside. Maintenance pod? Kathavar couldn't hide his incredulity. They're using maintenance equipment as assault vehicles? Sir, Beltane said, monitoring the communications from the boarded ship. The human intruders are moving through the Eternal Victory with intimate knowledge of our ship design. How is that possible? Nyxara looked up from her console, her expression troubled. Admiral, I've been analyzing their approach patterns and attack strategies. These humans, they've been studying us. While we were preparing for a standard conquest, they were learning everything they could about our technology, our tactics, our ship designs. Impossible. We've never encountered them before. No, sir, but we've encountered 47 other species, and according to their communication intercepts, they've been in contact with several of our former conquest targets. The tactical display suddenly filled with new contacts, dozens of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. But these weren't human vessels, sir, Raven called out. We're detecting Altarian energy signatures, Centauri drive systems, and... Admiral, those are Xerion stealth frigates. What are our former conquest targets doing here? His question was answered by an incoming transmission. The screen showed not a human, but a familiar reptilian face. General Siskatar of the Altarian resistance movement that the Empire had crushed 15 years ago. Greetings. Admiral Kethver, the Altarian said with a predatory smile. Long time no see. When our human friends told us you were coming to visit their system, we simply couldn't resist the opportunity to renew old acquaintances. Another face appeared on screen. Commander Vexila of the Centauri Defense Force, her blue skin marked with the ritual scars of defeat. The humans reached out to us 6 months ago. They wanted to learn about Imperial tactics. We were very happy to share our experiences. A third face joined them, a Xerion whose translucent features flickered with barely controlled rage. They asked us about your ship designs, your weapons, your standard operational procedures. We gave them everything. Admiral Thompson's face reappeared among the others. We told you we'd been fighting each other for thousands of years. What we didn't mention is that we're very good at making friends with the people our enemies have wronged. Kathavar stared at the screen as the full scope of the trap became clear. The humans hadn't just prepared to fight the Zephyrian Empire. They had formed an alliance with everyone the Empire had ever conquered. Sir, Raven reported, his voice tight with growing panic. Enemy fleet strength is now over 4,000 vessels. We're detecting at least 12 different species, all former Imperial conquest targets. They're all using combined tactics. And sir, Nyxara added, I'm reading some very disturbing energy signatures from the human ships. They're not just using their own improvised weapons anymore. They're using Imperial technology. What? The humans have somehow acquired our weapon systems and integrated them with their own technology. They're mounting Imperial plasma cannons on mining vessels, using our shield generators to protect civilian transports. Somehow they've reverse-engineered our technology and improved it. On the tactical display, the human fleet was no longer the chaotic swarm it had appeared to be initially. Ships moved with purpose and coordination, but maintained the unpredictability that had made them so hard to target. They fought like a pack of predators, individually dangerous, collectively overwhelming. Sir, Communications Officer Beltane called out. The Eternal Victory has gone silent. Last transmission indicated the human boarding party had reached the bridge. The Silver Talon reports massive hull breaches. They're requesting permission to abandon ship. The Cosmic Spear is reporting complete weapons failure. Something is interfering with their targeting systems. Admiral, Kathavar watched his fleet, the pride of the Imperial Navy, being systematically dismantled by a force that shouldn't have been able to touch them. Ships that had conquered worlds were being outfought by converted civilian vessels crewed by farmers, mechanics and shopkeepers. How? He whispered to himself. How is this possible? As if she had heard him across the void, Admiral Thompson's voice came through the communication system. You want to know our secret, Admiral? It's simple. Every species you've conquered fought you alone. They had their armies, their governments, their military traditions. Very proper, very organized, very predictable. The human fleet pressed their attack. Weapons fire lighting up space as Zephyrian ships found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned by vessels that by all rights should have been space scrap. We don't fight like that, Thompson continued. When you threaten humanity, you don't just fight our military. You fight our farmers who know how to handle dangerous equipment. You fight our mechanics who know how to fix anything and make it better. You fight our teachers who know how to share knowledge. Our doctors who know how to work under pressure. Our artists who know how to think creatively. Another Zephyrian ship disappeared in a brilliant explosion as a converted cargo hauler managed to ram it with a mining drill. Modified into a massive lance, you thought you were fighting Earth's military, Admiral. You're not. You're fighting all of humanity, and we're very, very good at war. The bridge of the Dominion's edge had become a chaos of alarms, flashing lights and increasingly desperate reports from the fleet. Admiral Kethvar stood at the center of it all, watching 3 millennia of Imperial dominance crumble before his eyes. Sir, the Void Render has been completely disabled, Raven reported, his scaled hands trembling as he worked his console. Something attached to their engines and... Sir, it appears they've been converted into a human vessel. The Void Render is now firing on our own ships. Converted? Kethvar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. How do you convert a ship in the middle of battle? Unknown, sir. But I'm reading human life signs throughout the vessel, and they've somehow modified the weapon systems to fire on Imperial frequencies. Science Officer Nixara looked up from her station, her compound eyes reflecting the chaos around them. Admiral, I'm detecting something unprecedented. The humans aren't just capturing our ships, they're learning from them. Every time they board one of our vessels, they're downloading our tactical databases, our technical specifications, our strategic protocols. Then they're sharing that information with their entire fleet instantaneously. That's impossible, Lieutenant Zaxthor hissed. Our quantum encryption is unbreakable. No primitive species should be able to... Sir, Veltane interrupted from communications. I'm monitoring human chatter. They're discussing our encryption like it's a children's puzzle. Apparently, their teenagers broke our quantum codes in under an hour. Kethvar spun toward her. Teenagers? Young humans, sir. Apparently, while their adults were preparing for war, their young were entertaining themselves by breaking our security systems. One of them, a 16-year-old human named Marcus, has been sharing our tactical codes with their fleet commanders as a fun afternoon project. The Admiral stared at the tactical display, watching as more red dots, his ships, turned blue as they fell under human control. The Imperial Navy wasn't just being defeated. It was being absorbed. Sir, Nixara said quietly, I'm beginning to understand their strategy. These humans don't just want to defeat us, they want to learn everything we know. Every ship they capture, every piece of technology they acquire makes them stronger. They're not just fighting a battle. They're conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. A new voice crackled through the communications array, Captain Hixera of the captured Eternal Victory. But his words were being translated through human equipment now. Admiral Kethvar, this is Captain Hixera. I'm still alive, sir, but I'm no longer in command of my ship, the humans. They didn't kill my crew. They're treating our wounded, feeding our hungry, and asking us questions. Questions? About the Empire, sir. About other species we've conquered. About our technology, our culture, our history. They're not interrogating us, they're interviewing us. Some of my crew are actually volunteering information. They're being kind to us, Admiral. Kethvar felt his worldview shifting beneath him like unstable ground. Kindness? In the middle of battle? Sir, one of the humans, a female named Dr. Sarah Kim, is treating injuries using a combination of our medical technology and theirs. She saved 3 of my crew members who would have died. When I asked why she was helping enemy soldiers, she said... Hixara paused. She said that once the fighting stops, we'll all need to live together. The Admiral's attention was drawn back to the tactical display by another impossible sight. A group of human ships had surrounded the damaged Zephyrian vessel Steelclaw, but instead of destroying it, they were Repairing it, sir, Raven said, his voice full of confusion. The humans are fixing the Steel Claw's engines. They're actually helping it restore power. Why? Unknown, sir, but I'm detecting Captain Vostek's command codes. He's still in command, but the ship is now flying in formation with the human fleet. Before Kethvar could process this information, the main screen activated. Captain Vostek appeared, looking bewildered but unhurt. Admiral, he said slowly, these humans, they disabled my ship, boarded it, treated my wounded crew, and then helped me repair it. One of them, an engineer named Rodriguez, showed me how to increase our engine efficiency by 30% using modifications they developed. Captain, report your status. Sir, I'm still in command of my vessel, but, Admiral, I need to ask you something. Why are we here? What are we really fighting for? Kethvar felt his certainty cracking. We're expanding the Empire. We're bringing order to the galaxy. Sir, these humans have been showing me records of the species we've conquered. The Altarians, the Centauri, the Xerians. They weren't primitive barbarians. They had cultures, art, technology, families. We didn't bring them order. We destroyed their civilizations. Captain, you're experiencing combat stress. Return to formation immediately. I can't do that, sir. I've seen what we really are, and I can't be part of it anymore. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Around them, more ships were switching sides, their crews either captured and converted or simply choosing to join the growing alliance that surrounded them. Admiral, Nixara said quietly, I'm detecting an incoming message from Earth's surface. It's addressed to you personally. The screen shifted to show an elderly human woman sitting in what appeared to be a garden. Behind her, children played while adults tended to plants. It was so peaceful, so normal, that it seemed impossible this was the same species currently dismantling his fleet. Admiral Kethvar, the woman said with a gentle smile. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Chen. I'm a xenoarchaeologist. I study the cultures of different species. I've been examining the records of your empire's conquests, and I wanted to speak with you. Kethvar found himself leaning forward despite himself. After hours of impossible tactics and devastating losses, this quiet academic seemed surreal. I know you think you're bringing order to the galaxy, Dr. Chen continued. Every empire believes that. The Romans thought they were civilizing barbarians. The British thought they were bringing progress to primitive peoples. Every conqueror in history has believed they were doing good. She paused, picking up what appeared to be a clay artifact. This is from the Altarian civilization. It's a child's toy, a small figurine made by a parent for their offspring. The Altarians had a saying, what we create with love echoes through the stars. Your empire destroyed their world 300 years ago. She set down the figurine and picked up another artifact. This is from the Centauri. It's a poem written in crystal, designed to be read by light refraction. It speaks of hope, of dreams, of the beauty of existence. The Centauri had developed a form of art that combined light, sound, and emotion in ways we're still trying to understand. More artifacts appeared on the table beside her. Xerion music compositions that could heal psychological trauma. Vegan mathematical theorems that might have revolutionized space travel. Tillian medical techniques that could have saved millions of lives. All lost because your empire decided that order was more important than diversity. Dr. Chen looked directly into the camera, her eyes sad but not angry. Admiral, your empire hasn't been bringing order to the galaxy. It's been making the universe a smaller, poorer, lonelier place. Every species you've conquered had something unique to offer. Every culture you've destroyed had knowledge, art, perspectives that could have benefited everyone. She gestured to the children playing behind her. These children will grow up in a galaxy where Altarian art, Centauri poetry, and Xerion music still exist because we chose to preserve them rather than destroy them. They'll learn from species you tried to erase. They'll build bridges where your empire built walls. The transmission paused as Dr. Chen seemed to consider her next words carefully. We're offering you the same choice we offered your crews, Admiral. Join us. Help us preserve what's left of the cultures your empire has damaged. Help us build something better than conquest and domination. The screen faded, leaving Admiral Kethvar staring at a tactical display that showed his once mighty fleet reduced to fewer than 50 ships, surrounded by thousands of human and allied vessels. Sir, Beltane said softly, we're receiving surrender offers from the remaining fleet. The humans are guaranteeing safe passage and offering. Sir, they're offering our crews positions in their alliance. Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers, soldiers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades, were looking at him with questions in their eyes. "Orders, sir?" Raven asked, but his voice carried none of its earlier certainty. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethvar found himself truly considering retreat. The tactical situation was beyond salvage. His fleet had been reduced to 43 ships surrounded by over 4,000 enemy vessels. But what disturbed him more than the military defeat was the growing doubt among his own officers. "Sir," Lieutenant Zaxthor said hesitantly, "perhaps we should consider the strategic value of a tactical withdrawal. We could return to Imperial space, report on human capabilities, and request reinforcements." Before Kethvar could respond, Science Officer Nixara spoke up. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the human alliance's formation patterns. If we attempt to retreat, I calculate a less than 12% chance of any ships reaching Imperial space. They've positioned their forces to cut off all escape routes. Then we fight to the last," Kethvar declared, but his words rang hollow even to himself. "Sir," Feltane interrupted, "we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet. It's coming from one of our own ships." The main screen activated to show the bridge of the Stellar Pride, or what had been the Stellar Pride. The familiar Imperial design had been modified with human technology, creating a hybrid vessel unlike anything Kethvar had ever seen. In the captain's chair sat Commander Thexval, but he wore no Imperial uniform. "Admiral," Commander Thexval said, his voice carrying a weight of new understanding, "I need to tell you what I've learned since joining the Alliance. Commander, you will return to Imperial formation immediately. That's a direct order." "I can't do that, sir. Not after what I've seen." Thexval gestured to his modified bridge where human and Zephyrian crew members worked side by side. "Admiral, these humans have shown me records of our conquests. Not the sanitized Imperial reports, but the actual events. What we did to the Altarians wasn't pacification. It was genocide." Kethavar's mandibles clicked in agitation. "The Altarians were a primitive, chaotic species. We brought them order." "No, sir. We brought them extinction. The humans have refugees, Admiral. Survivors we never knew existed. They've been hiding throughout the galaxy for centuries, preserving what remained of their culture." The screen split to show an Altarian refugee camp on a human colony world. "They're showing me artifacts, sharing stories, teaching me their language. We didn't conquer them. We murdered them." "Commander, you're experiencing psychological manipulation by enemy forces." "Am I?" Thexaval's voice hardened. "Then explain this." The screen shifted to show a vast archive facility. Rows upon rows of data storage units stretched into the distance, each one labeled with the name of a species the Empire had conquered. "This is the Archive of Lost Civilizations," Thexaval explained. "The humans have been gathering survivors, collecting artifacts, preserving languages and cultures that the Empire tried to erase. They've saved more alien knowledge than exists in all Imperial databases combined." A human figure appeared on screen, a young woman with kind eyes and gentle manner. "This is Dr. Sarah Okafor, the same engineer who was working on Mining Station Series 7. She's also a xenolinguist who speaks 17 dead languages that the Empire destroyed. She's been teaching me Altarian poetry, Admiral. Did you know they had a form of verse that could induce healing meditation states?" Kethvar felt his worldview continuing to crack. "The Altarians were technologically primitive." "No, sir. They were technologically different. Their biotechnology was centuries ahead of ours. They could grow starships from modified coral, create living computers from engineered algae. We never learned from them because we destroyed them before we understood what they had achieved." The transmission shifted again, showing the bridge of another converted Imperial vessel. Captain Drictos of the Nebula Reaper appeared, but like Thexval, he wore no Imperial insignia. "Admiral," Captain Drictos said, "I've been speaking with Centauri refugees. Do you remember the Centauri incident 17 years ago? The official report said they attacked our survey fleet unprovoked. They did attack unprovoked." Kethvar replied, but his certainty was wavering. "No, sir. They attacked because our survey fleet was strip mining their holy sites. The Centauri used crystal formations for religious ceremonies, structures they'd been growing for thousands of years. Our mining operation was destroying sites they considered sacred. When they asked us to stop, we ignored them. When they begged us to stop, we labeled them hostile." Captain Drictos gestured to someone off-screen, and a Centauri stepped into view. The blue-skinned alien's features were marked with age and sorrow, but when they spoke, their voice was filled with dignified strength. "I am Elder Kexhai of the Centauri Council," the alien said. "I remember the day your ships came to our world. We tried to communicate, to explain the significance of what you were destroying. Your commanders told us that progress was more important than primitive superstitions." The elder paused, their large eyes reflecting pain that had been carried for years. "Those primitive superstitions were the repositories of our entire cultural history. Each crystal formation contained the memories of our ancestors, going back 10,000 years. Your mining operation destroyed the equivalent of our entire historical record in a single day." Kethavar found himself unable to respond. The official reports had mentioned resistance from local population groups. They had never mentioned the destruction of an entire civilization's historical records. "Sir," Nixara said quietly, "I'm detecting something else. The humans aren't just preserving these cultures, they're integrating them. I'm reading Altarian biotechnology being used in human medical facilities. Centauri crystal mathematics are being applied to their navigation systems. Xerion emotional healing techniques are being taught in their schools. They're not conquering these species," Raven added, studying his tactical display. "They're collaborating with them. Every refugee culture makes their alliance stronger, more diverse, more capable." Admiral Thompson's voice came through the communications system. "Admiral Kethavar, you've been listening to reports from your former officers. I hope you're beginning to understand what your empire really represents." The main screen showed Admiral Thompson on her bridge, but now she was flanked by representatives from dozens of species, former Imperial subjects who had joined the Human Alliance. Every species your empire conquered had something unique to offer the galaxy. Thompson continued, "Knowledge, art, technology, perspectives that could have made everyone's lives better. Instead of learning from them, you tried to make them all the same. You turned a galaxy full of beautiful diversity into a monotonous empire of conformity." An Altarian scientist stepped forward. "Our biotechnology could have solved food shortages on 100 worlds." A Centauri artist spoke next. "Our crystalline art forms could have revolutionized interstellar communication." A Xerion philosopher added, "Our emotional healing practices could have ended the cycle of war and conquest that has plagued the galaxy for millennia." "Instead," Admiral Thompson said, "your empire chose to destroy what it couldn't control and control what it couldn't understand. You made the galaxy smaller, poorer, and lonelier." She paused, looking directly at Kethavar through the screen. "We're offering you one final chance, Admiral. Surrender your remaining ships and your crews can join us in building something better. Help us preserve what's left of the cultures your empire has damaged. Help us make sure that the galaxy becomes a place where diversity is celebrated, not destroyed." The communication channel filled with voices, former Imperial officers now serving with the Human Alliance, representatives from refugee populations, human citizens speaking in languages they had learned from extinct civilizations. "The choice is yours, Admiral," Thompson concluded. "Continue fighting for an empire that destroys everything beautiful in the galaxy, or help us build an alliance that preserves and celebrates it." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Dominion's edge in absolute silence. Kethavar looked around at his officers, soldiers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades, now questioning everything they had believed. "Sir," Veltane said softly, "we're receiving surrender offers from our remaining ships. The Cosmic Talon, the Void Strike, the Star Render, they're all requesting permission to join the Alliance." Kethavar stared at the tactical display. 43 ships remained under his command, 43 ships against 4,000. But the numbers weren't what made his decision. It was the growing realization that everything he had fought for, everything he had believed in, had been built on a foundation of lies. "Orders, sir?" Raven asked, his voice barely above a whisper. For the first time in his career, Admiral Kethavar was unsure of his answer. Admiral Kethavar stood alone in his ready room, staring out at the tactical display that showed his fleet reduced to 37 ships. 6 more had surrendered in the past hour. Through the viewport, he could see the Human Alliance fleet maintaining a respectful distance, neither pressing their attack nor blocking potential escape routes. It was a gesture of patience that the Empire would never have shown. A soft chime indicated an incoming private communication. Kethavar activated his personal console, expecting to see Admiral Thompson or perhaps another defecting Imperial officer. Instead, he found himself looking at an elderly human male in simple civilian clothes. "Admiral Kethvar," the man said with a gentle smile. "My name is Professor David Kim. I'm a historian from Earth University. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I wanted to speak with you before you make your final decision." "I don't see what a historian could tell me about military tactics," Kethvar replied, but something in the human's manner made him continue listening. "Oh, I'm not here to discuss tactics, Admiral. I'm here to tell you about empires." Professor Kim settled back in his chair, and Kethvar noticed the walls behind him were lined with books, actual physical books, not data storage devices. "You see, humanity has quite a bit of experience with empires. We've built them, we've been conquered by them, and we've watched them rise and fall for thousands of years." The professor picked up one of the books, its pages yellow with age. The Roman Empire lasted for over 1,000 years. At its height, it controlled most of the known world. The Romans believed they were bringing civilization to barbarians, law to chaos, order to a primitive world. The humans had their own empire? Kethvar asked despite himself. Several, actually. The Roman Empire, the British Empire, the Mongol Empire, many others. Each one believed it was bringing progress to lesser peoples. Each one was convinced that conquest was a form of charity. Professor Kim set down the book and picked up another. "But do you know what happened to all of them, Admiral? They fell. Every single one." "Empires fall due to external enemies or internal weakness," Kethvar stated. "The Zephyrian Empire has neither." "Oh, but you do," Professor Kim said with sad certainty. "You have the same weakness that destroyed every empire in human history. You've forgotten that your strength comes from the people you rule, not from your ability to rule them." The professor stood and walked to a window. Through it, Kethvar could see a city bustling with activity, humans working alongside aliens he didn't recognize. The Roman Empire fell because it spent so much effort controlling its subjects that it forgot to serve them. The British Empire crumbled when the people it ruled decided they preferred freedom to order. Every empire in history has made the same mistake. They confused fear with respect, compliance with loyalty. Kethvar found himself leaning forward. "The Empire provides order, stability, protection. Does it, Admiral? I've been studying Imperial records for the past 6 months. Do you know what I found?" Professor Kim returned to his desk and pulled out a data pad. "In the 300 years since the Empire conquered the Altarian system, productivity has declined by 60%. Crime rates have increased by 40%. Population growth has stagnated. That's impossible. Imperial oversight ensures optimal efficiency." "No, Admiral. Imperial oversight ensures compliance. There's a difference." The professor's voice was patient, like a teacher explaining a difficult concept. "When you crush a people's spirit, when you destroy their culture and replace it with imperial doctrine, you don't make them more productive, you make them less human." The screen shifted to show images from various imperial worlds. Kethvar saw the familiar sight of orderly cities, uniform architecture, regimented populations going about their daily tasks with mechanical precision. "This is what the Empire calls success," Professor Kim said. "Order, uniformity, predictability. But look closer, Admiral. Do you see joy in those faces? Do you see creativity, innovation, hope?" Kethvar studied the images. The populations looked empty. They performed their duties efficiently, but there was something missing from their expressions. Something he had never noticed before. "The Empire hasn't created a galaxy of productive citizens," Professor Kim continued. "It's created a galaxy of robots. You've taken species that could have contributed art, science, philosophy, music, and turned them into factory workers in a cosmic assembly line." A new voice joined the conversation. Admiral Thompson appeared on a split screen. "Professor Kim is right, Admiral. Every species your empire conquered had potential that was never realized. Imagine what the galaxy could have been if instead of conquering the Altarians, you had partnered with them. If instead of occupying Centauri space, you had collaborated with them. The Empire brought peace to the galaxy," Kethvar said, but his words sounded weak even to himself. "You brought silence," Thompson corrected. "There's a difference. Peace comes from cooperation, from mutual respect, from building something together. What you call peace is just the absence of resistance." Professor Kim picked up another book, this one clearly ancient. "Admiral, may I tell you about the Pax Romana, the Roman peace?" For 200 years, the Roman Empire maintained order across their known world. No major wars, no rebellions, everything calm and efficient. That sounds like success. On the surface, yes. But during those 200 years of peace, innovation slowed, art became formulaic, and the diverse cultures that Rome had conquered gradually disappeared. By the time the empire fell, much of human knowledge and creativity had been lost forever. The professor set down the book and looked directly at Kethvar. "Admiral, your empire is making the same mistake. You're not preserving peace, you're creating stagnation. You're not bringing order. You're eliminating diversity. And diversity, Admiral, is the source of all progress." Admiral Thompson leaned forward on her screen. "Every human innovation, every advance in our technology, every solution to problems we've faced has come from the collision of different ideas, different perspectives, different ways of thinking. When you force everyone to think the same way, you don't create efficiency, you create intellectual poverty." "But conflict leads to war," Kethvar protested. "Diversity leads to chaos." "Sometimes," Professor Kim admitted, "but it also leads to growth, to discovery, to beauty." He gestured to the window again. "That city you see out there? It's not orderly like an imperial world. People argue, they disagree, they sometimes fight, but they also create, innovate, dream. They build things we never could have imagined alone." The communication channel expanded to show other perspectives. Dr. Elizabeth Chen appeared from her garden, surrounded by artifacts from a dozen extinct civilizations. "Admiral, we've spent 6 months studying the cultures your empire destroyed. Do you want to know what we found?" Despite himself, Kethvar nodded. "Solutions," Dr. Chen said simply. "The Altarians had developed biological computers that could have revolutionized medicine. The Centauri had mathematical theorems that could have made faster-than-light travel practical for everyone. The Xerians had philosophical frameworks that could have ended war as a method of solving disputes." She picked up one of the artifacts, a small, crystalline device that pulsed with inner light. "This is an Altarian memory crystal. It contains the complete genetic medicine knowledge of their species. If your empire had preserved their culture instead of destroying it, you could have eliminated disease throughout the galaxy 3 centuries ago." Kethvar stared at the device. That's impossible. If such knowledge existed, Imperial science would have developed it." "No, Admiral," Professor Kim said gently. "Imperial science couldn't have developed it because Imperial science only thinks in Imperial ways. You need different perspectives, different approaches, different methods of understanding the universe to make real breakthroughs." Admiral Thompson added, "That's humanity's secret, Admiral. We're not stronger than you, or smarter than you, or more advanced than you, but we're more diverse than you. We have people who think in ways your empire never allowed, and when different ways of thinking come together, magic happens." The screen showed images from human space, laboratories where humans worked alongside Altarian refugees to develop new biotechnology, art studios where Centauri crystal techniques were being combined with human creativity, meditation centers where Xerion emotional healing practices were being taught to children. "This is what the galaxy could be," Professor Kim said. "Not uniform, not orderly, not predictable, but alive, growing, becoming something greater than any of us could achieve alone." Kethvar looked around his empty ready room, then back at the faces on the screen, humans and aliens working together, learning from each other, building something new. "What you're describing sounds like chaos," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "It is chaotic," Admiral Thompson admitted with a smile. "It's messy and complicated and sometimes frustrating. But Admiral, it's also beautiful, and it's alive in a way that your empire never could be." The transmission paused, leaving Kethvar alone with his thoughts and a decision that would determine not just his fate, but the fate of everyone under his command. Admiral Kethvar returned to his bridge to find his remaining officers gathered around the main tactical display. 29 ships. That's all that remained of the Imperial fleet that had arrived with such confidence just hours before. But what surprised him was the expression on his officers' faces. It wasn't defeat he saw there, or even fear. It was something else entirely. "Sir?" Science Officer Nix Ara said as he approached. "We've been monitoring the communications between the Human Alliance and our surrendered vessels. Admiral, our crews aren't being imprisoned or executed. They're being integrated." "What do you mean, integrated?" Lieutenant Zaxthor gestured to his console. Sir, I'm tracking the Stellar Pride. Commander Thexaval's crew is working alongside human engineers to retrofit their ship with Alliance technology. But it's not a conversion, it's a collaboration. They're combining Imperial and human systems to create something neither species could build alone. And sir, Beltane added from communications, I'm monitoring personal messages from crew members on surrendered ships. They're happy. Confused but happy. Many are expressing excitement about learning new technologies, new cultures, new ways of thinking. Kethvar looked at the tactical display. The human Alliance fleet maintained its protective formation around them, but there was no aggression in their positioning. They were simply waiting. Admiral, Raven said quietly, I've been running tactical simulations. Even if we somehow managed to escape this system, what would we be returning to? An empire that destroys everything unique and beautiful in the galaxy? An empire that turns diverse species into identical drones? You're questioning the empire that has given you everything? Kethavar asked, but his words lacked conviction. Sir, Nixara said, respectfully, what has the empire given us? Order, yes. Structure, certainly. But has it given us joy? Has it given us growth? Has it given us anything worth preserving? Before Kethavar could answer, the main communication array activated. Admiral Thompson appeared on screen, but she was no longer alone. Surrounding her were the officers from the surrendered Imperial ships, Thexval, Driktos, and dozens of others. But they weren't prisoners. They wore new uniforms that combined Imperial design with Alliance insignia, and their faces showed something Kethvar had never seen in Imperial service: genuine enthusiasm. Admiral, Commander Thexval said, stepping forward, I need to show you something. The screen shifted to show the modified bridge of his ship. Imperial efficiency had been combined with human creativity to create something entirely new. Sir, in the past 6 hours I've learned more about engineering, about art, about life itself than I learned in 20 years of Imperial service. Captain Driktos joined him. Admiral, they've shown me Centauri crystal mathematics. It's beautiful, sir. Mathematics that creates music. Equations that generate art. How did we conquer a species that could do that and never think to learn from them? Because the Empire teaches us that different means inferior, said another voice. Commander Yestai of the Void Cutter appeared on screen. But these humans have shown me that different means any possibility. Admiral Thompson stepped forward. Admiral Kethavar, your officers are discovering what we learned long ago. Diversity isn't a weakness to be controlled. It's a strength to be celebrated. The screen shifted to show various locations throughout the Alliance fleet. In one section, human engineers worked alongside Altarian biotechnicians to develop living ship hulls that could self-repair. In another, Centauri artists collaborated with human musicians to create compositions that existed as both sound and light. Xerion philosophers discussed emotional healing techniques with human psychologists. This is what we're building, Admiral Thompson continued. Not an empire that forces conformity, but an alliance that encourages growth. Not a system that eliminates differences, but one that celebrates them. Dr. Elizabeth Chen appeared on a secondary screen. Admiral, we've been analyzing Imperial historical records. Do you know that in the 3,000 years of your empire's existence, you've developed virtually no new technologies, created no new art forms, made no significant scientific breakthroughs? Kethvar felt his certainty cracking. The Empire has perfected existing systems. We have achieved optimal efficiency. You've achieved stagnation, Professor Kim interjected gently. When you eliminate diversity of thought, you eliminate the possibility of new ideas. When you force everyone to think the same way, you guarantee that no one will think of anything new. The screen showed comparison charts, Imperial technological development over 3 millennia, compared to human development over just the past few centuries. The difference was stark. While the Empire had maintained and refined existing technologies, humans had innovated constantly, driven by the collision of different ideas and perspectives. Admiral Thompson said, we're not asking you to abandon everything you've believed. We're asking you to expand it, to grow beyond it, to become more than you ever imagined possible. And sir, Commander Thexval added, we're asking you to help us preserve what the Empire tried to destroy. Help us rebuild the cultures that were lost. Help us make sure that never happens again. Kethavar looked around his bridge one final time. His officers, loyal soldiers who had served the Empire faithfully, were all looking at him with the same expression. Hope. Something he realized he hadn't seen in Imperial service for decades. "Sir," Veltane said softly, "we're receiving a final communication from the Alliance. They're offering us something." "What?" "A choice, sir. Not surrender, not conquest, but a choice. They want to know if we'd like to help them build something better." Admiral Thompson's voice filled the bridge. "Admiral Kethvar, we know this isn't easy. Abandoning everything you've believed, everything you've served, everything you've been told is right, it's terrifying. But Admiral, look around you. Look at your officers. Look at the reports from your surrendered ships. Ask yourself, what kind of galaxy do you want to leave to the next generation?" The tactical display shifted to show the full scope of the Alliance fleet. Thousands of ships from dozens of species, all working together, all contributing their unique strengths to something greater than any of them could achieve alone. "We're offering you the chance to be part of something that builds instead of destroys, that preserves instead of eliminates, that celebrates difference instead of erasing it." Admiral Thompson's voice was warm, inviting. "The choice is yours, Admiral. All of yours." Kethvar looked at each of his officers in turn. Nixara with her scientific curiosity finally unleashed. Raven with his tactical mind freed to explore new possibilities. Veltane with her communication skills ready to bridge between species instead of conquering them. Zaxthor with his military discipline ready to serve something worth preserving. "Admiral," Raven said quietly. "Orders, sir?" For the first time in his career, Admiral Kethvar smiled. Not the predatory smile of a conqueror, but the wondering smile of someone seeing new possibilities. "Signal the Alliance fleet," he said, his voice steady and sure. "This is Admiral Kethvar of the former Imperial vessel Dominion's Edge. We would like to join you, all ships, sir," Raven asked. Kethvar looked at the tactical display one last time, then at the faces of his officers, faces that now showed excitement instead of resignation, hope instead of duty. "All ships, Commander. Signal the entire fleet. Tell them," he paused, considering his words carefully. "Tell them that we're ready to help build something better." As the final Imperial ships joined the growing alliance, Kethvar realized that this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. The beginning of a galaxy where different species didn't just coexist but thrived together, where diversity was celebrated, not eliminated, where the impossible became possible through the simple act of different minds working toward a common goal. The Zephyrian Empire had come to Sol System to add another conquest to their long history of domination. Instead, they had discovered something far more valuable, the possibility of becoming more than they had ever imagined. Humanity had kept their promise. They had shown the galaxy what happened when you crossed them. But more importantly, they had shown what was possible when you joined them. In the end, that made all the difference.